it's Raimi, and today I am doing my top 24 of 2024, which is kind of a lot, but it was so cool to go back through and just take a moment and sift through all of the books that I read in 2024 and pick out the ones that really stood out to me, that really impacted me, that really connected with me. Just go back and kind of reminisce and appreciate these stories. So I wanted to share my top 24 with you guys. I'm filming this on New Year's Eve, so this is like officially closed out. I'm not gonna be finishing any other books. I'm obviously in the middle of books. This is like the end of 2024. I read 78 books in 2024, which is one more than last year, so I did see a tiny increase, which is great. My reading goal was 60 books, so I smashed that, which I was genuinely surprised because it was such a busy year this year. Let's get started. These I just grabbed from the shelf. It is in no particular order. The first one that I am grabbing is the Selection by Kiera Cass. This was such a surprise to me. I wound up reading the whole series via audio and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The first book I gave a 4.5 stars. I thought it was very entertaining. I thought it was dynamic. I thought that it had interesting characters, interesting plot lines. There were definitely things that were cheesy. The main character really had some growing up to do, but it is a young adult book, so that is to be expected. The next book that was a surprise to me was the Lazarus Crown by Abigail Owen. This is a young adult book and it is part of a series. This book was such a surprise because it had been sitting on my shelf for a very long time and I just had kind of been putting it off. Like, it would sound good sometimes. I tried reading a couple pages of it and it just wasn't the vibe, and then I finally just sat down, committed to reading it, and it was very different than I expected. The atmosphere of it was very different than I expected. The world was very different. And the overall plot was very different than I expected. And I very much enjoyed it. I am really looking forward to moving on to the next book in this series. This book, okay? If you have never read Taylor Jenkins Reid, if you are unsure about Taylor Jenkins Reid, if you don't know which book to dive into of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, this right here. They're all kind of like interconnected in some way or another, but you don't have to read them in any particular order. I have read a handful of Taylor Jenkins Reid books and they have all been very good. This book was a 6-star book for me. I was immediately intrigued, immediately sucked in, immediately connected to these characters. They were characters that like you don't like, and I was so interested in their story, and it was just so incredibly written. The triumph and the trials and the struggles and the realness of it was so good. I listened to this book. I would highly recommend listening to it, and then I immediately started going back and annotating it the millisecond I finished the audiobook. I made a Pinterest board for this book. I never do that. I wanted to be in this world. I wanted to be Carrie Soto. I wanted to just dive into this book. Next is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is a really fun advanced reader's copy that I got in a free little library, actually. Very exciting. And I read this with my book club and we were all kind of laughing, giggling because it is kind of a silly, goofy story in the sense that like the main character's kind of dumb and everything is just all over the place. Very fantastical, very whimsical, very all over the place, but in a very good way. And so I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. I did continue the series. The second book I didn't care for as much. The third book I thought was better. This first book was such a great introduction into the world, into the characters. It was such a fun book club book because there were just so many things that you were kind of like, what? Like, is that for real? And it was so fun to get to talk to the book club girls about, so I'm so glad I read this. 4.5 stars. Next, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Such an incredible book. Also, I found this really cute paperback copy with these blue sprayed edges to go with the very colorful front theme. I gave it a 5 stars. I would not ever normally pick up a book about video game developers, and I'm not really that into video games. I was just so enthralled with this book. There were maybe a few parts here and there that were a little bit slow. Overall though, the imagery, the emotional depth of this book, the way that the characters go through things, the way that you're frustrated with these characters, the way that you are falling in love and devastated with these characters, as well as the different, I don't want to give anything away, but like the different sections of different styles of writing and storytelling were just so interesting, and I've never read anything like it. And yeah, definitely a 5 out of 5 for Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Next is this little copy of Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote, I think is how you say his name. I have grown up loving the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's with Audrey Hepburn, and I was in Europe and I had brought 1 or 2 books as well as my Kindle. I love carrying around a book with me and getting to crack it open whenever there's a free moment. The little travel bag that I brought barely fit my Kindle and definitely did not fit a normal book. So in one of the first bookstores that we went to in Italy, they had a small section of English books, this being one of them. And I, just thought it was such a beautiful edition of Breakfast at Tiffany's, and also it was a classic that I definitely wanted to read based off of my love for the movie. And so I grabbed it, kept it in my bag with me the entire time we were going around Europe, and I wound up finishing it while we were on our Europe trip. This book will absolutely be so precious to me just for that. I was very enthralled by the story, and I'm glad that I know the premise of the story before reading it, because there were definitely things that were different, plot lines that weren't fully followed through with, and the ending was completely different than the movie. I just enjoyed kind of getting to see the bones of a classic and a movie that I know and love, and getting to see where that story was inspired by was just such a cool experience. I did give this a 5 star. It's still a wonderful story. It's still an incredible story. Next is Happy Place by Emily Henry. We're just kind of on a roll right now with the 5 stars, but I did give this book a 5 star. I have not read an Emily Henry book since Beach Read, so it has been a while, and I saw this. The premise sounded so interesting, and I picked it up, read it, absolutely fell in love with it. The friends and the love and the pain and all of that shared was just so deep and real, along with such a beautiful love story. And this book truly broke my heart and then put it back together again. Next is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. Absolutely fell in love with it. I thought it was better than Practice Makes Perfect just by a hair. I did give this a 5 star. I just love Sarah Adams' romance books. I think she does an incredible job with the story building, with the community building, with the perfect balance of emotional complexity while also keeping the lighthearted, fun, silly, comedic romance. I think she does an incredible balance for that, where this is just such a good palate cleanser book that is high quality. And then I also put on here, Oh, I knew that was gonna happen. I also put the rule book, which I actually won this in a Goodreads giveaway, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever won one of those before. So it took literally so long to get here, but that's okay because it's a free book. And I thought this one was also very good. I don't know if I gave this a 5 stars. I think this one was a little bit less memorable than the other book in this world, The Cheat Sheet. But I still thought it was so funny, so sweet. I just love her banter, her comedy, her tenderness, the way that the characters finally connect. I love how she does romance books, so this was definitely in the top reads of 2024. Wow. Saying a lot of words. Okay. Next is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and I'm sure you have heard so many people talk about this book this year, but it is for good reason. This was such an incredible book. It was 5 stars for me. I kind of went back and forth between listening to it and reading it, and I'm so glad because I annotated the literal crap out of this book. There were so many quotes that hit home on this book. Like literally the first freaking page. I have the first page all the way through, halfway through the second page. You could just quote that in that. I mean, it's just so incredibly beautiful because it has the appeal of the mystery with the bank robbery and like what's happening with that, along with a traditional literary fiction book. I think that's really what drew me into this. I did get this in a free little library, so that was a wonderful find. Yeah, I don't think I have anything bad to say about this book. I thought the story was incredible. The characters were so unique and so interesting, and I was so curious about them, and the ending of the story was so compelling. So good. Next, I have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and this book I gave a 5 stars. I thought that this book was so incredibly done with the backdrop of war mixed with kind of like the Greek mythology with the gods, and then mixed with just normal human struggles and family struggles. And I just thought it was such an incredible blend of magic and realism and war and fantasy and love and heartbreak, and so good. I was quite disappointed by the second book. So this just lives as a standalone book for me because I didn't really care for the second book. Let's see, maybe we should put these up here so you can see them. Wah! Okay. Is that better? So you can see the books. Next we have The Invisible Life of Addie Laroo. This one I gave 4.5 stars. The only reason why I docked it a 0.5 point was because there were quite a few points along the story that I felt like really lagged. But the quality of the story and the overall plot of the story was so interesting to me, and I was really curious as to the outcome of her story based on everything that she has gone through over hundreds of years, as well as the antagonistic character. I felt very emotional throughout the story and what Addie has been through, and her strength, perseverance was absolutely beautiful. Next, we have The Scarlet Veil, which is a continuation story from Serpent and Dove, and it is about one of the characters that you meet and get to know in Serpent and Dove, and I very much enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.25. I don't think it was like the most incredible book that I read this year, but I love the Serpent and Dove series so much, and so getting to get back into this world and kind of get to see little sneak peeks of the characters that I know and love was so good and just such a great way to start off the year. I read this very early on in 2024. This was definitely like one of those that wasn't the best read ever, but it was such a vibe and so fun for me to jump back into this world that it definitely makes the top 24. Hopefully this doesn't fall, which it might. Next we have The Assassin's Blade and Crown of Midnight. So these two specifically I thought have been the best of the series that I've read so far. I have read Throne of Glass. I wasn't really into it, which is kind of sad. I wanted to be more into it than I was. I think I gave that one like a 3 stars. I did give The Assassin's Blade 4 stars, and I gave Crown of Midnight 4.25. And I definitely think these are good starts, intros into the series. I'm still holding out hope for the series, so if you have any words of encouragement, please let me know. I feel like everybody and their brother and their mother and their cousin and their sister loves this series. I'm a little on the fence about it still, but these I do feel like were quality books with quality stories, quality plot lines, and quality characters. So these definitely made it into the top 24. Whew, scary. Okay, Savorite by Tara DeWitt. This is an arc that I got. I absolutely love this story. I gave it a 4.75. I thought it was a very sweet story. It was a little spicy, but I did feel like the male main character and the female main character, They truly like wanted to care for each other, wanted it to work, wanted to figure it out, and had some serious hurdles that they had to overcome in order to be together. I think that the way that trauma was written in this was done very well. I think that the main character, the male main character, taking care of his younger sister was a very sweet addition. I definitely found myself tearing up throughout this book. Yeah, just very much enjoyed it. Then we have... Oh my gosh. We have Daisy Hates, Magnolia, The Long Way Home, Daisy Hates, The Great Undoing, and Magnolia Parks, Into the Dark. These all 100% make it into the top 24 of 2024. These books, there is just something in them, okay? There is just something in them. I think my least favorite of these was probably Into the Dark, only because I felt like it could have been shorter, but I think that the story was incredible and the conclusion was great. The very, 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 very end of the book was a little bit of a letdown, but overall, such an incredible conclusion to the story. I definitely think I love the Daisy books a little bit more, only because I feel like I connect with her character a little bit more, but overall, so incredible. If you haven't dipped your toe into these books, just be careful. They're freaking huge and emotional and scarring and wonderful all at the same time. Jessa really knows how to write. The next book, which was kind of a surprise, I read this very late in the year, and it is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, and I got this really cute edition with the little purple sprayed edges. Absolutely love it. The cover is so cute. Oh my gosh, I listened to this via audio, and I went out and had to buy myself a trophy copy because I loved it so much. I want to share it with everyone. I just thought this was the sweetest story. It is about a girl who is a librarian in this city, and she winds up getting into some trouble and having to flee because of a revolution. So she flees with Kaz, a sentient spider plant, and they go back to her home island, and it's kind of her trying to figure out what's going on with where she came from, integrating into this new / old place that she used to live but she hasn't for a long time, running into issues with survival, integration, whatever. I cannot wait to read more of what this author writes. I think she has a book that's going to be, I don't know if it'll be connected in any way to this, but she has another book coming out in 2025 and I'm very excited to read it. This book, it just keeps winding up being one of my top books for a couple of reasons. This is Mountains Made of Glass by Scarlet St. Clair. It is a very short book. It might be considered a novella. I don't know what's considered a novella, but it's like 220 pages. I did finish this in one sitting because it was so entertaining. It does have quite a bit of spice in here for such a small book, but what I absolutely fell in love with this book is that it is a fairy tale retelling, but it's a combination of a handful of different fairy tale retellings. And in the back with the author's note, which I've never seen this before, she goes through and essentially explains what fairy tale she pulled from, why, what parts she pulled from, like what she enjoyed about them, what parts she wanted to use and kind of maintain different parts of it. And I just think that was such a great exclamation point to the story. And I love getting to see her creative process in building this story. So I don't know, it felt a little more deep after reading that than just this little fairy smut book, if that makes sense. So I loved you could find all the little Easter eggs in there that were the fairy tale retellings, and I just ate this up. I had to put it in the top 25 because it is not every day that I read a book in one sitting. I give this a 4, and I think that that's very fair for the length of the book, the amount of story told in the book. And now, last but certainly not least. Oh, technically this is not last. This is this and Rebel Witch. So The Heartless Hunter was one of those books that when I saw it, when I read the description, I was like, this is going to be a book for me. That was 100% accurate. This did not let me down. This was such an incredible book. Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli, I think is how you say her name. 5 out of 5. Such a good book. I love a witch and witch hunter book. The push and pull and the dynamics and the love and the hate and the danger. The main character is also kind of a socialite, so you're getting more of an aspect of like the fancy balls and the dresses and the, you know, the elegance and all of that mixed in was just so good. It was everything that I needed, everything that I wanted. So good. And then I did get the arc for Rebel Witch, which is the ending to this duology. It did not quite hit as hard as the Heartless Hunter, so I did give Rebel Witch a 4.5, but one, I'm so incredibly grateful to have been able to read this book ahead of time. I also was so excited to get the conclusion of the story that is the Heartless Hunter. So good, such a great conclusion, such a beautiful story. It lives very close to Serpent and Dove in my heart, so such a good series. If you love Serpent and Dove, you will probably love the Heartless Hunter. That's a lot of books. 2024 was such an incredible year. It was a very busy, difficult year, but a beautiful year, and I am very excited and looking forward to 2025 and building a little bit more structure in my life for reading, YouTube, and doing all of this because it is something that I absolutely love, and I love the community that books provide. I want to devote more time and energy towards it, and I'm really excited and looking forward to that in 2025. So stick around. I can't wait to read some amazing books with you guys. Let me know what your top 2024 books were. I'm always wanting recommendations, always wanting to know what you guys are reading and what's good. So please let me know in the comments below. Happy reading. Bye.